As game masters, we cannot rely on cheap jump scares or gore for our campaigns. Instead, we rely on tension and dread to scare our players. And mostly, this tension comes from how we structure our horror sessions. So this Halloween, I want to walk you through a structure you can use to scare your players. We begin with the cold start. Our session originates in the normal world of the story. Horror ought to begin like a normal adventure. Ideally, the players in your session should have no actual idea what the horror is going to be. The cold start is supposed to set up a baseline world and understanding of how things are supposed to be. Horror is a diversion from the norm and general expectations. Therefore, I would also recommend for most horror sessions to give a benign quest to start them off. Don't send your party on a quest to exorcise a haunted mine. Send your party on a quest to clear out a mine of kobolds and discover the mine is haunted while you're there. After the cold start though, we have the spook, and this is a hint that something is wrong. The spook could be weird omens, noises in the forest, weird bone effigies that look like your player characters as they're traveling. However you do it, the point of the spook is to give a glimpse at the horror that is to come. You're telling the players that yes, they are in fact in a horror game. It is here you are lighting the fire of the tension and dread that is to build over the course of the session. But after the spook, we don't keep on raising the tension. Instead, we enter what I like to call the Valley of Dread. This is what can absolutely make your horror session, because the Valley of Dread is a return to the normal world with the knowledge granted by the spook. The players now know that something is wrong, but the world as they see it is no longer justifying that knowledge. Here, you are letting the players' own minds work against them. Let them check around every corner. Let them wait for the other shoe to drop. However, above all else, restrain yourself. Allow the Valley of Dread to stretch. About halfway through the session though, we're going to enter the Rising Stress section. Here, those spooky elements begin to return. That promise of horror that you made earlier on, you are beginning to fulfill. Those weird omens and signs are creeping up again. You might actually start dropping hints about what's actually going on during this section. But from here on out, the horror is in full swing. And just as the players are starting to settle into the groove of the rising stress, we hit them with an unexpected escalation. Horror is about the unknown. To truly scare your players, you gotta be unpredictable. Part of that tension and dread comes from not knowing what's gonna happen next. So about 65 or 75% of the way through the session, you can finally unleash the horror. And ideally, you're doing this in a way that your players do not expect. So if the players are in a haunted mine trying to hunt kobolds, maybe this is when you learn that the kobolds have been dead this entire time as the ghosts begin to rise out of the walls and floor of the mine. And this is important, don't show the horror too early. In the best horror media, from books to movies, the thing we're supposed to be afraid of isn't shown for a long time. We only see the shark from Jaws fully in the third act of the movie. So once again, game masters out there, restrain yourselves. In horror games, when you can allow the players' imaginations to run wild, less is more. But after this escalation, we're going to enter the calm before the storm, and this is what's going to send your players over the edge. After the escalation, have everything go quiet and still. The players aren't actually in a place of safety, but the threat isn't actively hunting them. But they don't know that. By giving them this calm, you're building up tension. Now that they know what's coming for them, their minds can fill in the gaps. So for one final time, stretch that tension until you can't stretch it anymore. And then we enter the terror, and the terror comes as the final showdown. We have built this extreme fear over the course of the session, because since the spook, as game masters, we've been ratcheting up the tension. During the unexpected escalation, we flashed the great evil once, and now it's back. If we're using Jaws as an example again, this is when Matt Hooper goes down into the cage. The players are now metaphorically in the water with the threat. But the terror is not the end, because after the terror comes a step I like to call worse than you ever imagined. This step is the final escalation. The players thought they knew how bad things could get, but it gets worse. This is when the subject of the horror reveals a new layer, and the players now begin to grasp how well and truly fucked they are. This could be the boat sinking, Michael Myers coming back from the dead, Perhaps the ghost the players are hunting is revealed to be one of hundreds in the haunted mine. Whatever the case, the final escalation is the thing that takes any horror session over the top. And from here, the players either escape the horror or lose. Wins are few and far between. But this is a structure of horror you can use in your next TTRPG game. This is a short video, I know, but I wanted to get it out before Halloween. And if you want more tips on running horror, check out this video right here. And if after this Halloween you want one-on-one coaching, I do offer that over on my Patreon. And thank you for entering the dungeon.